The EuroVelo 4 winds its way through the Czech Republic as if it didn't want to miss a single part of the country. The straight route through southern Poland, on the other hand, is comparatively short. And going forward to Kiev in the Ukraine is out of question at the moment, at least not on a summer cycle tour. One day, in the not too distant future, the border between Poland and Ukraine will hopefully look like the border today between Walsassen and Hip. This is a fairly remote area on the edge of the Fichtel Mountains, and I cycle on country roads and sometimes on cycle paths through forests and meadows. And there is a sign somewhere with the 12 stars and Česká republika. This is how it should be. And this is the only way Europe will have a future. Hep looks like a small German town, except that the language is Czech. In contrast to the German side, EuroVelo 4 is explicitly signposted here, and a beautifully developed cycle path begins at the edge of the town, leading along the river Eger. Google doesn't recognize any cycle paths in the Czech Republic, but that doesn't matter in this case. The Eger also flows through Karlsbad, today Karlovy Vary, and that's where I want to go. Here, the Eger is a small river, and it still needs more than 150 kilometers before it flows into the Elbe. The Eger cycle path from Hep is very well developed, even if it's not paved for long stretches. It mostly leads through rural areas without any major sights, but offers a really good cycling experience and is also used by a lot of local cyclists. The route to Karlovy Vary is just under 50 kilometers, and Falkenau, today Sokolov, lies roughly in the middle. Around 15 kilometers before Karlovy Vary, I cycle past Loket Castle, where illustrious personalities such as Konrad IV from the Hohenstaufen dynasty and Emperor Charles IV stayed. Unfortunately, I don't have time to visit the museum house there. I continue along the beautiful river valley and reach Karlovy Vary, the famous spa town, shortly before 5 p.m. The spa facilities stretch along the Tepla River, which flows into the Eger here. EuroVelo 4, the Central Europe route, is one of the EuroVelos with an even number. This means that the cycle route crosses Europe in a west-east direction. Its starting point is Roscoff in Brittany, and its destination is Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. In contrast to the capital city route, EuroVelo 2, EuroVelo 4 tends to avoid the capital cities. In its western section through France, Belgium, the Netherlands and Germany, it does not visit a single one. In the east, at least Prague and Kiev. And with a little goodwill, you can add Krakow as the secret capital of Poland, as the Russian dictator and his regime of the undead, as Julian Haas so aptly characterizes it, are still terrorizing Ukraine with their war of conquest. I have to put cycling on to Kiev out of my mind at the moment. But I am sure I will reach it, especially in view of the many Ukrainian refugees who live and work in Germany and in Eastern Europe. I will be able to cycle on to Kiev in the not too distant future. And Kiev will be part of the European Union, whether officially or unofficially. My first destination for the day in the Czech Republic, Karlovy Vary, is now also a World Heritage Site, along with several other spa towns. This is certainly appropriate, as you can read at every turn which important poets, thinkers and statesmen try to cure themselves with the miraculous waters from here. Today, Karlovy Vary is a pretty town with 50,000 inhabitants and, like most spa towns, tends to appeal to an older clientele. I climb several viewpoints and attend a piano concert at the Imperial Spa in the evening. This spa center lies opposite the Grand Hotel Pupp. It opened in 1895, was left to decay for a long time, but has now been magnificently renovated and shines in new splendor with its pseudo-Renaissance architecture. After 2 days in Karlovy Vary, I struggle up from the steep Tepla valley to the plateau and make my way towards Prague. The gradient is so steep that my e-bike Lemo 1 with the old software can't cope. As the distance to Prague is too much for one day, my destination is Lani u Rakovnika. It's a small village in the north of the Krivokladsko forest. I don't always use EuroVelo 4 as the route is sometimes confusing and difficult to follow. I mostly cycle on small side roads over many hills and through extensive forests. I passed the small towns of Slutice, Jesenice u Rakovnika and Rakovnik and cover a good 100 kilometers. I only reach my destination about 7 p.m., pretty exhausted and glad to get a tasty dinner. The following day I cycle into the wooded area to the south of Lani. My first destination is the famous Krivoklad Castle. It was founded in the 13th century in the center of a royal hunting forest and was constantly expanded. Since modern times, however, it had fallen into disrepair until it was taken over by the Fürstenberg dynasty and restored in a romantic style. Today, the castle belongs to the Czech state. It is a tourist highlight and features show fights. From the castle, I cycle further south, always up and down the hills, mostly on small country roads, but sometimes also on forest tracks. At the small town of Brno, I leave the hills and the forest and unexpectedly encounter one of the most beautiful cycle paths I have come across so far on EuroVelo 4. It leads along the river Berunka, Beraun or formerly Mies, in the direction of the Moldava and Prague. The river first flows through a steep valley, the north bank of which is formed by the Bohemian karst. The largest karst landscape in Bohemia is now a protected landscape area and is also home to the famous Karlstein Castle. As I already visited it, I will save myself the detour. The Bohemian karst area was formed around 400 million years ago. It is therefore significantly older than the Swabian or Franconian Jura. The cycle path along the Barun is very well developed here. Time and again I come across beer gardens, playgrounds and climbing walls. There are almost as many cyclists on the route as on the Main. Directly on the southern outskirts of Prague, the Barunka flows into the Moldava, and a well-developed cycle path takes me right into the center of the Czech capital. About 2 kilometers south of Charles Bridge, I turn east, as my hotel is on the outskirts of the city center, but close to a metro station. The following day, I take a look at how the city center of Prague has changed since my last visit 25 years ago. The number of tourists has increased, but I wouldn't call it over-tourism. In some places, such as the Jewish quarter, you only see a few tourists. Even the Prague Community Center, which has been beautifully restored, is by no means overcrowded. There is an interesting E-Mucha exhibition on the upper floor.
Original posters brought to life for the first time. Experience the...
And I have no problem finding a seat in the very nice restaurant. The place where the crowds throng is the Charles Bridge. But that was also the case 25 years ago. And at sunset, the crowds are not so noticeable. Maybe they are all at the Rachini, but I skip it this time. From Prague, I head east towards the Elbe River. At first, I cycle through rather unattractive suburbs with insufficiently signposted cycle paths. It's not until I reach the Elbe or Labe, which is still a fairly modest little river here, that things improve. Here I come across a beautiful and well signposted cycle path that leads me to my destination for the day, Kolín. The next day I want to work my way up to the heights of the next mountain range, in this case the Bohemian Moravian heights, which form a barrier before Brno. But that doesn't work out. After just under 30 kilometers, I find myself in the middle of a World Heritage Site, which is also linked to the geology of the area and which I had completely overlooked. It is the small town of Kutna Hora, famous for its silver mining. The town was founded in the High Middle Ages and became very important for its silver mining. It was regarded as the country's treasure trove, and was the second most important Bohemian royal town after Prague. The impressive Gothic-style cathedral of Santa Barbara and the early Baroque Jesuit college still bear witness to this period of wealth and splendor. I walk through Kutna Hora for a whole day, and in the evening visit the town's silver museum with a guided tour of an old mining tunnel. The next morning I actually tackle the ascent to the next mountain range. My e-bike with a rear wheel motor is not exactly well suited for this, but there are only a few cars and almost no trucks on the small country roads, so I make good progress. After the climb near Tremosnice, I first visit the ruins of Lichnice Castle. From the edge of the Iron Mountains, I have a beautiful view back to the foothills. Then I cycle past several lakes towards my destination, Alinsko. On my way, I come across an old Jewish cemetery on the banks of a large reservoir in the middle of the forest. As I continue my journey to Bystrice nad Pernsteinem, I come across another World Heritage Site. The pilgrimage church of St. John of Nepomuk on the Green Hill. The church was rebuilt at the end of the 18th century after a fire. Both the central building and the entire complex have the structure of a five-pointed star. The architectural style, which combines Gothic and Baroque elements, is unique in Europe. The following route leads me through a hilly hinterland with altitudes between 600 and 700 meters. Only about 40 kilometers before Brno does it descend again to an altitude of around 250 meters. The last 10 kilometers, after passing Eichhorn Castle, I cycle along the large Brno Reservoir, the surroundings of which serve as a local recreation area. I reach the city boundary of Brno following a largely car-free cycle path. In Brno, where an Oktoberfest atmosphere is already occupying the market square, I conclude the first part of my journey through the Czech Republic in late summer 2023. And here I continue my journey in early summer 2024. But this time I do not use an e-bike, but stay organic or analog. I choose my tried and tested Max Cycless Monza, which at 10 kilograms weighs only half as much as the Lemo 1 e-bike. As I hardly know Moravia and southern Poland yet, I don't want to cycle long daily distances. And that is always tempting with an e-bike. Before I set off again from Brno, I take a look at the city's World Heritage Site, at least from the outside, because the guided tours of Villa Tugendhat are already fully booked. The villa has been designed by Mies van der Rohe. It is situated on a hill with a beautiful view through large glass windows over Brno's old town. The next morning I wind my way out of Brno via many detours and dead ends. I'm heading in an easterly direction. The university neighborhoods are being expanded here, but the priority given to cycle paths, as in Tübingen, is still a long way off. It takes me some time before I reach the edge of the small airport and then, after about 20 kilometers, the memorial to the Battle of Austerlitz, the Monument of Peace, with its café and museum, commemorates the Battle of the Three Emperors, with which Napoleon secured his rule over Central Europe.
The Duke of Liechtenstein will, I believe.
I then follow the valley of the Litava River, past small towns with and without castles to Nezovice. Here I turn southwards into the narrow valley of the Kyjovka. In this valley, a very beautiful cycle path leads me from Nemotice to my destination for the day, Kiev. From here the route continues close to the Austrian border, a diversion that I can't explain at first. For the time being, I'm happy to be able to cycle mostly on dedicated car-free cycle paths. After crossing a large wooded area, I reach Strassnitz, where the largest European folklore festival is held every year. This region in the south of Moravia is also famous for its wine growing. There are also old Jewish remains. And this is where an excellently developed cycle path starts, which leads along the Morava river and which I follow for the next 2.5 days. I first stop off in Huerskere Hadiste and in Kromaris. On the third day, I leave the Morava cycle path after about 20 kilometers and turn east towards the Moravian Gate and Ostrava. The cycle path along the Morava is very well developed and is used by locals and some tourist groups. It runs through scenic meadows and small towns and is almost free of climbs. Only in the few places where major new construction projects are underway does it turn into sheer chaos. Here one can clearly feel the supremacy given to cars. Bike travelers have to crawl under fences and push their bikes across fields. Perhaps the locals recognize some kind of bypass. I don't recognize anything here. Fortunately, this is only the case in a few places, and most of the time you cycle through a beautiful and varied landscape. There are several castles worth seeing, mostly in the classicist style. My attempt to visit Buchlovice Castle fails, as the Czechs only allow the common people limited open hours. However, I can do an extensive tour of Kromeris Castle. The complex, originally a Gothic castle, was built in several different styles. The current building dates from the late Baroque period and served as an archiepiscopal palace. Together with the castle park and flower garden, it is on the UNESCO World Heritage List. As traveling through the Moravian gate in one day is too much of a challenge for me, I stop off in the small town of Hranice na Morave. The town has a beautiful market square and lies on the edge of the Moravian karst. The next day I have a chance to take a good look at the karst as I make my way past a large quarry in the direction of Ostrava. The quarry is at an altitude of almost 1000 meters and I have to struggle up 350 meters from Hranice. It reminds me of the Doddernhausen quarry on the western Swabian Jura. When I finally get out of the ups and downs of the hilly terrain, I cycle through a large wooded area with many small lakes. The cycle path here is well developed and largely car-free. At around 3 p.m. I reach the outskirts of Ostrava. This is the second largest agglomeration in the Czech Republic, ahead of Brno. But that doesn't make it any prettier. I have a hotel room right in the center, which is disproportionately expensive because a music festival is taking place that weekend. The following day I leave Ostrava on cycle paths that run alongside rivers and canals and cycle towards the Polish border. After about 10 kilometers I leave the conurbation and enter a rural area with small villages. I don't notice any border. I cycle slowly along a dirt track, past fields and pastures, and suddenly find myself in a small village. It has a large nail and beauty parlor. As I realize later, this seems to be a fairly typical feature of Polish villages. From the border, it's another 15 kilometers to Wisła Mariwa, my first destination for the day in Poland. The town, with its beautiful wooden church dedicated to St. James, is situated on a large reservoir formed by the river Vistula. This creates an extensive recreational area, and the lake also supplies drinking water for the Upper Silesian industrial area and serves as flood protection. My hotel is in a very quiet location, and the restaurant serves an excellent beef roulade for dinner. From there I cycle via Auschwitz to Krakow, mostly on dedicated cycle paths. Several times I am informed by signs that the EU was involved in the funding, but there are no signs announcing that I am on EuroVelo 4. The cycle path is usually signposted as Velómetropolis. A coherent system is missing. Hopefully, Tusk can improve things here too. The last time I visited Auschwitz and Krakow was shortly after the fall of the Iron Curtain. The guided tours back then were very intensive, and I save myself the well-known main sites now. In Auschwitz, where I suddenly find myself at the entrance to Brno after cycling through a vast forest, I visit the Memorial Museum for the inhabitants of the Oswiecim region and the Maximilian Kolbe Center of the Franciscans in Harmese. The center is located about 10 kilometers from Auschwitz in a lake district. There is an exhibition there by the Polish artist Marian Kolodziej, who transformed his experiences in the Auschwitz camp into impressive graphics. The cycle ride from Auschwitz to Krakow initially takes me along well-maintained cycle paths through the floodplains of the Vistula. Cycling here is a pleasure. Then it's a seamless transition into limbo, or limbo for cyclists. Google and Komoot guide me onto Kakowska. This is a mixture of a small broken country road and motorway-like traffic, where it feels like every second vehicle is a heavy goods truck with a trailer. I have this very unpleasant experience a few more times in Poland. I don't know where all the lorries are coming from, and I don't know where they are going. But I know one thing for sure. They have no business on a route that is designed a EuroVelo. I try to escape this automotive chaos, the frightening extent of which I have never experienced in the Czech Republic, Bulgaria or Romania, as quickly as possible. I even take a long diversion to do so. Fortunately, my route leads me back to the Vistula floodplains, a good 10 kilometers before Krakow. There I follow a well-developed car-free cycle path right into the center of Krakow. My hotel in Krakow is just outside the city center, and to get there I cross the Vistula on the beautiful new Pater Bernardek pedestrian and cycle bridge. The acrobatic figures are particularly impressive when illuminated at night. In Krakow, too, I dedicate myself to the less well-known sites. I visit a special exhibition of sculptures from Lviv in the Wawel. And in the evening, a concert in the Baroque St. Peter and Paul Church in the Old Town. My attempt to visit the museum, which newly opened in 2010 in the building of Oskar Schindler's former enamel factory, unfortunately fails. It is fully booked for days, thanks to the internet. The next day I leave Krakow and head east. I have decided to cover the leg to Tarnow with a stop over in Przesko. The cycle path leading out of Krakow is fine. It is raised and runs as an extended pavement. From the city limits, I cycle along the Vistula for a while and then enter a very large wooded area, which I cross on a straight road with no traffic. When I am finally back in open terrain, the cycle path is blocked and the only bridge is closed due to dilapidation. I work my way towards Bohemia on small country roads with little car traffic. On the outskirts, I sit out a 2-hour downpour with hail, lightning and thunder in a covered bus shelter. From there, it's another 15 kilometers to Przesko, my destination for the day. I cycle the last stage of this tour to Tarnow again on an easy cycle path. The distance is just 40 kilometers. The route is almost completely free of traffic and also almost entirely without gradients. Nevertheless, it is not very interesting, as most of it runs right next to the motorway, and the roar of the cars and trucks is constantly in my ears. No offense, but a good cycle path is laid out differently. Tarnow is the penultimate major Polish town before the Ukrainian border. I don't want to cycle onto Sechwo until the war in the Ukraine is at an end. Tarnow has just over 100,000 inhabitants and no major sights. Nevertheless, it is a beautiful, lively and interesting town. Tarnow is very Catholic, with most Polish priests coming from this region, while at the same time large Jewish and Roma minorities lived here. Tarnow also has the only museum in Poland dedicated specifically to the history and culture of the Roma. Before I board the train home to Germany via Vienna, I take a long stroll through the town of Tarnow. The town was destroyed in the Second World War, but today the center has been superbly restored, especially the market square with the town hall in the Renaissance style. I keep coming across bronze sculptures on my walks through the town center. For example, the Bench of Poets. Unfortunately, Stanislav Lem is not among them. I hope to meet him in Lviv if I continue my cycle tour to Kiev, when there is peace and Ukraine is preparing to join the European Union.